Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about the concepts of effort and results, and their consequences in terms of recognition.
We've all encountered a classmate or colleague who's as hardworking as they come. Willing to try and try again, like Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill again and again. Someone who never grows weary of their superhuman efforts but despite it all never manages to succeed.
Or the opposite, the person who gets the result you've always dreamed of, seemingly without lifting a finger. A bit like when you struggle to open a jar and someone offers to help and pops the lid off in seconds.
Effort does not guarantee a result. And to achieve the same result, two people may have to make drastically different amounts of effort. That's life. But how does this apply to management? And how does it tie in with recognition, effort, and results? The paradox of recognition. What's the story?
It could have done it with my hands tied behind my back. It was a piece of cake, a walk in the park. All these common expressions highlight a disconnect between the effort required to obtain the desired result, as though the person using them somehow benefited from the lever effect, thereby achieving a greater reaction with less force.
To lift a 10 kilograms object, you have to conquer the pull of gravity. Remember the apple hitting Newton's head. And the pull of gravity at a particular spot on Earth is the same. You'll need a force of X newtons to lift the object, and the X is the same for everyone.
Right, and if it's too heavy I can use a system of pulleys to reduce the force required. But what does that have to do with effort, since in this example, the force required is the same for everyone?
Effort is what I have to do to produce that force. In our example, it can be measured in joules. It's the product of the force I need to apply. 100 newtons, for example, and the distance over which I apply it, 1 meter, for example.
In other words, it's the energy required to obtain the desired result. And in this case, it's definitely not the same for everyone. Using 100 calories of energy doesn't require the same exertion from everyone, even though it's still 100 calories.
And, as it turns out, people want to be rewarded and recognized for their efforts, which is reasonable enough.
Whereas companies are mostly interested in results. But that's not necessarily problematic, since we just saw that the same amount of energy produces the same result. 1,000 calories is 1,000 calories for everyone. We can just reward 1,000 calories the same way.
Except that the suffering provoked by the effort is a feeling, and everyone doesn't perceive things the same way. If you've grown up carrying heavy loads, it doesn't feel as insurmountable as it does to someone who's never done it before.
And people want to be rewarded for their perception of what the effort cost them, whereas the company can only take into consideration the objective results achieved.
Right, companies take stock of results, not effort, which doesn't fit with employee expectations. The two parties perceive things differently, and that's the paradox. That's why you need more evaluation parameters.
Parameters in which managers and human resources departments play important roles because they help establish norms that are acceptable to all, ensure that the efforts made don't result in suffering, and see to it that rewards are perceived as fair.
To recap, the paradox of recognition resides in the fact that everyone wants their efforts to be rewarded, when a company can only reward results. But the effort required of each person to achieve the same result differs, and perceptions of it are subjective. So it's essential to take both results and effort into consideration. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short.
Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.